Have you ever felt like something is watching you in the dark? Not an animal, not a person, but something else, something that should not exist. There are places in this world that don't belong to us, places that hide ancient horrors that would rather remain forgotten. I was face to face with the Wendigo, and although I still don't know if I'm alive, what took me that night continues to haunt me. If you're listening to this, be careful. The story begins in a forest in the north. The wind howled through the trees, an icy melody that seeped into every corner of my clothes and penetrated to the bone. I had made a mistake by going into the woods so late. It was the middle of winter, and snowstorms were coming without warning. But I had no choice. My job as a ranger required me to answer the call. 2 hikers had gotten lost the night before, and the search couldn't wait. The path became narrower and narrower, the trees, tall and leafy, forming a roof that blocked the moonlight. My flashlight was the only thing guiding me. As I went along, I felt a strange heaviness in the air. Something about this place was wrong. I couldn't explain it, but every rustle of the branches and every shadow made my head spin.
If you like this video, like, subscribe, and activate the bell.
Hoping to find something. After walking for hours, the first signs of the storm began to appear. The wind blew harder, kicking up snowflakes that danced in the air like white ghosts. The temperature dropped dramatically, and my breath turned into clouds in front of my face. I decided to set up a makeshift camp. There was no sign of the hikers, but I couldn't risk continuing in the middle of the storm. I built a small shelter and lit a fire. As the flames danced, the forest seemed to recede, as if the shadows themselves feared the light. But then something strange happened. Between the crackling of the fire and the whistling of the wind, I heard a whisper. It wasn't the sound of the wind. It was something else. A deep murmur, like a voice speaking in an unknown language. I froze, trying to convince myself that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But the whisper intensified. It was as if it came from everywhere and nowhere at once, enveloping me in a strange guttural chant that seemed to penetrate my mind. I took my flashlight and pointed it at the woods, hoping to find some animal. But what I saw made my blood run cold. A few feet away, among the trees, a tall, skeletal figure was watching me. Its body was grotesque, unnaturally elongated, and its skin looked like the bark of a dead tree, cracked and grayish. His eyes, sunken and empty, shone with a yellow glow, as if an evil flame were burning within them. I wanted to scream, but my voice got stuck in my throat. The creature wasn't moving, but its presence was overwhelming, as if its mere existence drained the heat and energy around me. It was a Wendigo. I had heard stories about him, old stories that the village elders told to scare the children, but I never believed it was real. The creature took a step toward me, its slow, deliberate gait. Every time he moved, the sound of his bones cracking filled the air, as if his body was about to fall apart. Retrocedi, tropezando con mi mochila. Mi instinto mi decía que corriera, pero mis piernas no respondían. Who are you? I managed to murmur, although I knew I wouldn't get an answer. The Wendigo stopped. For a moment, I thought it would go away, that it had all been a delirium caused by cold and tiredness. But then he opened his mouth, and what came out of it was an inhuman scream, a shriek that did not belong to this world. It was like the sound of the wind blowing through an infinite cavern, mixed with a chorus of laments. That scream broke me. I jumped up and ran, not caring about the fire or my provisions. I just wanted to escape from that thing, even though I didn't know where to go. The forest was an endless labyrinth, and the snow had erased any trace of the path it had taken. At every step, I felt the Wendigo following me. I didn't see it, but I knew it was there, lurking in the shadows, enjoying my feet. My lungs were burning and my legs were threatening to give way, but I kept running until I tripped and fell into a small depression in the ground. There, covered in snow, I found something that took my breath away, a shattered tent. It was red, torn as if something with huge claws had torn it to pieces. Inside, there were remnants of clothing and food, but I saw no sign of hikers. Only bloodstains, frozen on the ground as mute evidence of what had happened. I felt like the world was spinning around me. This was not a simple disappearance. Something had caught those people, and now it was after me. Before I could react, the whisper returned, louder, clearer. This time, he seemed to say my name. Gabriel. It was impossible, but I heard it clearly. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, mocking my panic. Then I saw him again. The Wendigo was standing on the other side of the tent, watching me with those empty eyes. His mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile, if it wasn't so terrifying. In his bony hand hung a bloody piece of cloth. "What do you want?" I shouted, even though I knew it didn't make sense. The Wendigo did not answer. Instead, he leaned forward, as if studying every part of me, and then faded into the darkness. But his presence was still there. I could feel it like a crushing weight on my chest. I don't know how long I stayed there, frozen in fear. When I finally mustered up the courage to move, I grabbed my flashlight and kept walking, this time with no clear direction. I just wanted to get out of the woods, but the forest didn't want to let me go. As I went, the trees seemed to close in around me, their branches forming twisted figures that reminded me of the Wendigo. Every shadow was a threat, every sound a reminder that he was not alone. Finally, I came to a clearing. In the center, there was a huge dead tree with long, gnarled branches that stretched like claws into the sky. Under the tree, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A pile of human bones, some still covered in frozen flesh. The Wendigo stood there, standing by the tree, in its imposing and unreal form. His gaze met mine, and I felt my soul being torn from my body. At that moment, I understood that I wasn't just a creature. It was a spirit, an evil force that fed on fear and despair. I clung to a crucifix around my neck, a gift from my mother, and began to pray. I'm not a particularly religious man, but at that time it was the only thing I could do. The Wendigo stopped, as if the act of praying had disturbed him. With one last cry, he disappeared into the trees, leaving behind him a terrifying silence. I ran without looking back, guided only by instinct. I don't know how, but I managed to find my way back to the village. When I finally came out of the woods, the sun was beginning to rise, bathing everything in a warm light that seemed to expel the darkness I had experienced. I never went back to that forest, but the memory of the Wendigo haunts me to this day. Sometimes on the coldest nights, when the wind whistles through the trees, I swear I hear its whisper calling me. Gabriel, I know I'm not safe. The Wendigo does not forget, and I know that one day he will come back for me. Here's a final message that can cause mystery and terror. Underscore, 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 underscore. Some say that the Wendigo is just a legend, an ancestral warning about greed and despair. But I know the truth. It's out there, waiting, watching, in the darkest corners where no one dares to look. If you ever find yourself in the silence of the forest and feel like something is following you, don't look back, because if you do, it may be the last thing you see. Because once the Wendigo chooses you, it never stops to look for you.
If you like this video, like, subscribe, and activate the bell.